We are ready to begin the next two techniques. We are going to learn about using salt in our watercolor painting and using the technique of dry brushing. I also want to take us a little bit into the next lesson by using glue. So for today's purposes, you will need 3 of your technique papers. Now there seemed to be a problem with some people knowing which papers to use. So they were labeled techniques, they were paper clipped together, and there were 8 of them. They're a heavier paper, so they cannot be confused with an index card. They're heavier paper like the watercolor paper. You will need 3 pieces of this today. You will need your watercolors, you will need your salt packets, your bottle of glue. I always have a paper towel when I'm painting. And of course, clean water. So every time you paint, you should be getting clean water as well as a pencil. So we are going to jump forward today into our next lesson and try the glue technique. Even though we're not learning the whole technique today, we're going to prep it for the next lesson when we will be using the glue technique. So with the glue, it acts as, it resists the paint. So we actually want to draw with the glue. Now, glue will dry transparent, so you will see through it. So remember, the first step of working with this paper is to put your name on the back. And when we're drawing today, we're going to draw with the glue. Some people like to draw it out in pencil first. And I did that here, but I did it so light that you can barely see my lines. It is so light. You do not want to draw this dark, because remember, watercolor is transparent, so this pencil will show through, and the glue is transparent, so the pencil will show through. And we don't want the pencil to be showing in our painting. So we are going to draw with the glue. Now, a trick with drawing with the glue is you open up the top. Everybody has new glue. I wouldn't open it all the way. And I always like to test it to make sure it's not going to come out too fast. It's a little faster than I want, so I close it. Okay, that looks good. And then I have that trusty paper towel to the side, so I just wipe my finger off. Now I always start gluing at the top and work my way down. My lines are really light, so you can't see them, but I can see them. And I'm just going to come in and follow my lines. You do not have to draw yours out with pencil first. You can just come in with the glue. You want a nice steady line of glue. And you're just slowly putting in your design. Trying to be as neat as you can. Now if you have an accident and too much glue comes out at one time, we'll just make that work. It's going to have to be a happy accident because it's really hard to get the glue off this paper. So we'll just somehow make that work. So you're going to want to be careful. If it feels like it's coming out too thick, then all you need to do is close the bottle a little bit. Trying to make even lines, so I'm going to come back and neaten that up. And like I said, this one is getting us ready for our next lesson. But this has to dry before we can paint on it. So that is the reason that we are doing this in advance, to get it ready. It will be dry the next time we meet so that we can talk about painting into this. Now by now you've realized what a fast medium watercolor is. It's very quick to work, and then also dries very fast. So I'm just coming in, taking my time, going over my lines. For this you can do any design you would like. You might want to do your name, you might have a drawing that you like to do, or a character. You might see something in nature you would like to draw. Your call. I just want you to have some fun with this technique. So once I have it drawn out with the glue, I'm going to very carefully, I'm going to shut my glue bottle, very important. I'm going to wipe the bottle off so it's clean and set it to the side. And then very, very carefully, whoops, I already stuck it in my watercolor, but very carefully I'm going to pick it up and set it somewhere safe to dry, because I don't need this till the next lesson. And then I'm ready to begin the two techniques that I talked about today. And that would be using the salt. So I'm opening up my salt packets now to get them ready. Because remember, watercolor is pretty quick and I want to be prepared. So I'm opening the salt packets. If you have salt at home and your family doesn't care if you use it, that's a bonus. So what I like to do is, you can on any of these work horizontal or place your paper vertically. Your call. It does not matter. But remember, your name is on the back and you're starting with clean water. So I'm just going to have a little fun with some purple today. Remember, the color is at its purest, its most intense when it comes right out of the palette here. I'm coming in and really getting it wet, hence watercolor, right? I'm going to have some fun with this one. This is one of my favorite techniques. So I'm getting it really wet. Wet my paper up all over here. Now, I want you to take your time when you're working on this. So please, 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 you don't need to rush through this. Take your time and think about it before you even start. So I like to use a lot of color with this one, with this technique. So the more water you add to the color, the wetter it will be here. I want to get it nice and wet, and then we're going to make sure you have the colors in there that you want. I'm going over all my areas, really filling it, getting some paint in there. I want to have some fun with this. Really wet. If it gets too dry, go in and wet it back up. Put some black in here too. I don't usually use black in watercolor, so this is new for me. So with this, get this black in here, and then just a little more blue. I want to show you by adding salt, it has such an interesting effect in the paint. Kind of draws the paint to it. Looks very cosmic with this, and that's kind of what it was going for. But you can see on here how the salt starts to grab the paint, and it has just a very interesting look to it. So it looks better in person than it's looking on this video. Oh, I'm dripping too. So you can keep that, I'm going to try to get that black over there a little bit more. Keep that in mind. It will look better when you're doing it in person. I want you to have fun with this. Take your time and enjoy it. You want it to be really wet when you're adding this salt on top of it so that it can grab that color and pull it. And then you'll notice that as it dries, it just really has an interesting effect. So this is one, and this is using salt. So I'm going to put this to the side to dry. And then the next technique I want you to practice today is called dry brushing. So with dry brushing, you add very little water and you have more paint. And this allows you to get details in. So if you have very little water and more paint, you can come in and you can make those details that you might want to do. This would allow you to come in, and I'm just going to show you on here. You're coming in and you can be a little more controlled with the watercolor. It's like you're drawing with it. You have very little water and a lot more paint. So with that, you're able to come in and make those details. This would be great for any detail you might be putting in your painting. You might let your watercolor dry and then come in after and put these details in that you want. That would be your call in a painting, but this is very, very, very controlled. But still you want to be mindful that when you put wet into wet, even when you're dry brushing, it can blend, so be careful there. And you might come in and it would be great if you're doing eyelashes. Just add a few little lines. It's great if you're putting in words and you want to have something a little more controlled. You would add very little paint and you could put your words in. If you're doing something like you want to add, and if you feel like you have too much water in your brush, just take and use your paper towel, wipe it off. You can come in, you can see like right in here, I could come in and put my eyebrow in. Much more control than if you were using as much water as normal with watercolors. So great for detail. Great for if you want to come in and put in words and you want to go in a dry area and this is how I sign my name when I'm watercolor painting. I use dry brushing. You can always practice this on a little piece of paper to the side before you try it on your paper. But again, very, very little water and more paint, which is different than what we've done so far with all our other techniques. This is good if you're doing something, perhaps you wanted to do leaves. You can come in and get those lines that you might see in a leaf. So if you were drawing, oops, my water's really muddy. I really need to get new water here. So if you were coming in and you were painting a leaf and it dried and you wanted to come in and get those lines on the inside after it dried, great technique for that. If you want to come in and put any little tiny detail in something, this is what dry brushing is great for. It's much more controlled, which isn't a characteristic that we usually have with watercolor. So I want you to practice and think about using the whole area. I just demonstrated in these small areas for you. I want you to think about using your whole piece of paper and what will you paint? Now some people want to draw it out first. They might want to come in and put their drawing in very light and then come over and dry brush it, and you can do that. Feel free to do that. So if you drew it out really light with your pencil, and then you can come back over it and dry brush over your pencil, if that's something that interests you. But you need to be thinking of using your area, have it be an interesting little composition. These should be 8 mini paintings when you're done. So they should be 8 small paintings when you're done. So we finished 2 today. We have the salt, and then you should be doing a dry brush painting. We do have our glue setting to the side for the next time we meet. So then once you're finished with these today, you will set them to the side. You will let them dry. Now some of us are working on these at home, and some of us are working on these at school. I put the due date as November 20th so that you can get them, take a picture of them, and turn them in digitally. And you will have time to gather your work together to get the picture and turn them in. So we will be starting a watercolor painting before the 20th, but I put the due date for these as the 20th. So I'm cleaning up here. My brush is washed, my palette's clean. I'm closing my paints and putting them to the side. I'm putting my work where I have it for next time. That seems to be a big problem, people losing their work. You need your work. This is a new quarter, a new time. Let's get all the assignments done. If you have any questions, reach out to me. Ask me, that's what I'm here for. So don't paint on that glue painting yet. Remember, it's just setting to the side, drying, and waiting for the next lesson. So today, enjoy drawing out your dry brush with the paint and using that salt technique. Have some fun.